I've been getting a lot of questions about these babies, these puppies right here. My nails, to be more exact. My third TikTok ever was my Ito. He's chilling back there, and I had matching Ito nails, and they were insane. And I think maybe 60% of the comments were about my nails and not the piece of art. Doing the Ito nails was an act of desperation because I've always been one of those people who thinks if I don't do everything in my power, I will not get the result I like. If I had just not done the nails and not got an Ito, I would have been like, it's because I didn't do the nails. Right? For Ito, I obviously did this portrait of him. I did the nails. I dressed up in Geo colors on his polling day. I made a Miss Hina standee and I brought her to the mall. Questionable. Venti Day came around and I'm getting Venti. Unfortunately, Venti Day was also Mr. Ayato Day right there. And I decided to do Ayato's portrait instead of Venti's. But by golly, I knew I was going to do Venti nails if it was the last thing I did. And because I get so many questions or exaltations, exclamations about my nails in the comment section of my reels and my TikToks all the time, I'm going to try my best to explain what's going on in this video. I don't know how well it's going to go, but we are going to try. So I feel the need to explain myself a little bit and explain my vision. Oh my god, visions. That's a Genshin Impact reference. I originally wanted to do sort of like a white and teal and gold, very godly celestial Venti. We've been dealt such a disservice not having seen Venti in game in his Archon outfit, because that's when he's on his most baddie behavior. And that goes for all of the Archons. Why do we not see Mr. Zhongli shirtless more often? Listen, I know his statue of the Seven is doing a lot of the work. The concept of these nails was of course Venti, but also grew out of this inane hankering for a French tip. Your classic French tip. I never wanted to have a bread and butter French tip before. For some reason, Venti brought this out on me. To do this French tip, I basically put a dot in the middle where the peak of the arch is going to be, and then on each side of the nail, I do a dot. And then I just connect them in an arch. Don't know why I'm using such a tiny brush for this. In fact, it's probably a lot easier if I use a bigger brush. But this does not last long. This whole like bridal celestial fantasy does not last long. I felt like I really wanted core Venti on the set of nails, so I ended up doing mismatched French tips in sort of a gradient, but the gradient wasn't really doing it for me, so I took one of them and made it more of a springy froggy green. I like that the fandom associates Venti with a frog because he is a frog. In fandom culture, characters tend to be split up in maybe 3 categories, maybe 4. Cat, dog, bunny, and maybe fox. I've seen some frog representation in Venti. Also, excuse me for not knowing how to use my camera because this shot is blurry, like blurry. Thank you. Here I'm just taking a gold and lining all my French tips to get that gold incorporated. This ends up being completely covered in almost all of my nails. I've had this mold for maybe a year or 2, and I've never really had a successful run of it. I was sort of determined to make this work because I really wanted the wings associated with Venti because, of course, Venti is the god of Animo. He is the god of the wind. And, of course, if we want to reference Archon Venti again, He has these beautiful white wings. His spirit form has the one wing, and his vision even has a wing. The way I figured out how to do them is after taking them out of the mold, I had to take a darker color and put that in the shadows to redefine the shapes. And then because the gold ended up becoming a little dull, I just went on top of the peaks with the gold again to bring back that chrome effect. Now next is a nail staple in the Geraldine universe. What I like to do is choose a nail and put as much glitter and rhinestone on that nail in a random array as possible. So that's what I did for these next two nails. You'll see in this second nail, I tried to make the one wing work, didn't quite work. And those are just always really quick, easy nails. When I'm doing a full set, having an easy win, very important to me. Here's another one of my favorite things to do with nails. So I put it down on the nail where I want it to be, and then I take any color I want. In this case, I'm using this very animo blue, green, teal, putting it down, putting some glitter on top of that, and then taking out the trusty old IBD hard gel, putting that on top to build dimension. And all of a sudden, it looks like I bought the gem that way. But I created it with my own hands, and it's such a slay. These also ended up being the nails that I decided to put the wings on either side. Next, we're going to start the painting portion. I like to start painting with the easiest thing first, and I use that sort of as a warm-up for later. So in this case, I'm starting with the Cecilia flower, and we're putting that on our pointer fingers. When I'm recording my art videos, the nails you see the most are my thumbs and then my pointer fingers. So having the most interesting designs on those two fingers is very beneficial to me. Basically, my process for painting, and you're gonna see this sort of become a theme for the rest of the nails, is this push and pull. So basically, I put down the basic shapes first and then I line them. And then I redefine those shapes, I add shading, and then I line them again. These nails were relatively easy to do because they were such simple shapes and very easy to line. So this goes by pretty fast. In the video, you'll see that push and pull and back and forth a little easier when we get into painting the thumbs after this. I actually really like how these Cecilia nails came out, though when I look at them, they're not necessarily a nail that I would think about putting on myself. I think it looks sort of Hawaiian hibiscus tropical shirt. And it also, especially on the white French tip, looks sort of bridal. And then I obviously finished this one off with a little sparkle in the middle. Now we're moving on to Spirit Venti. You'll see the paint is going down on this nail a little more rougher than the other nails, and that's because I didn't really put anything on this nail. I just put on a base coat and then roughed it up. This is where you'll see my process illuminated a little bit. I put down the roughest shapes as possible. I'm really just trying to get the shapes in as quick as possible, and I sort of use that as a guideline. The next step after I put on the basic shapes is the background. So I like to use the background as an opportunity to cut into that rough shape and clean those shapes up even more. So for this background, I ended up using the teal to sort of bring it back to the teal animo gem that I did on my middle fingers. So this line art again is fairly messy, and I'm also like drawing things that I did not get in the first time, so little tiny details and fixing the shape even more. The second coat of white serves multiple purposes. One, to make the white opaque, but I also use the opportunity to clean up the insides of my line art. So again, I'm cleaning and refining the line art that I had done previously. It's basically every layer is refining the layer that I did previously, and eventually you'll get to a finished nail art design. After the white, I start on the gradient, so I use this really light blue, and then I dab on a darker blue on top of that. Because that dark blue doesn't blend as readily as the light blue did into the white, I'll use a clean brush to just blend that out sort of seamlessly. Again, refining. I'm refining the face of Spirit Venti, and we're going to finish off the face with a tiny, 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 tiny little eye. Very cute, very cute. You can see the obvious difference between the lines this time around and the lines that were there previously. I also find like once you really know where the shapes are, you become a lot more confident with your line work. So these ended up being a lot smoother and a lot more satisfying to watch. Again, to mimic the stone on the middle fingers, I put the same blue glitter on top. Now we're going for the big boy. So this is the reference photo I used. It made me feel a little warm and fuzzy inside, so I chose it. I don't know if you've noticed, tend to do eyes closed because I don't really want to deal with drawing two eyes. I also just like seeing the characters I like being happy and smiling. And could you blame me for that? Exactly the same process as my other painted nails. I'm putting on a base shape. The thing specifically about Genshin characters that I found out after, doing all these portraits, is a lot of them don't look like themselves until you get their hair right. And when I say get their hair right, I mean like the strands. I don't know, maybe that's just because of my own skill. I don't think these characters look like themselves until their hair is laid correctly. The polish I'm using is not opaque at all. I'm just trying to figure out the shape and setting up the proportions as well as I can. So after I do the general hair shape, again, because proportions are so important in these early stages, I'm sketching out where his face is actually going to lay. This face sketch ends up being completely covered 100 times over, but it's important to me to know that the face actually works this early because it's harder to fix the proportions the further you get. So just having this as a base and knowing things are correct is very important. In any like portrait painting, doesn't even matter if you're just doing it on your nails. Because his focus is his face, I don't tend to put that much work into the clothing, especially since the clothing is so tiny compared to his face. But I do think like the hat is very important in framing the piece compositionally and also sort of letting you know that's Venti, because I don't know about you, but as soon as that hat went in, like I recognize this is Venti now. And then I'll take basically the mid-tone color of Venti's hair and block that in. After you do the mid-tones, I go in with my shadows, and this is when I start doing the strands and really defining the hair a little bit more. The braid, I just kind of didn't want to think about it that hard, so I didn't. Try to refine it in a way that it's readable as a braid, but not putting in the work to actually make it physically a braid. Here I'm actually lining the hair with black, but the hair is so dark that you can barely see the lines in this video, so whatever, I guess. And then the reference image doesn't really have this strong highlight on the hair, but I ended up doing it anyway, just to add more dimension to the piece. Here I am playing with that braid once again. Very fun. A little ay-ya-ya moment. The face just wasn't the right color for the shadow it was supposed to be in, and redefining the rim light, which really makes this pop. When such a distinctive shape is there, I can place the face a little easier. I also place the nose. This nose ends up being repainted later anyway. And then I'm lining the face with brown instead of black, just to keep it soft and cute. I don't know where my face sketching went. I'm basically just slowly taking darker and darker browns to deepen the lines that I've already made previously. And I basically go from light brown, dark brown, even darker brown to black. One of my favorite parts about this portrait was honestly the mouth. Surprisingly, it was so tiny, but it was one of those things where like a single dot of pigment could change the whole piece. So like doing the corners of his mouth was so fun. And then of course we can't finish without some blushies. Added the blush and then a nice juicy top coat. And this is how they ended up. I thought they ended up really cute. It's kind of funny being able to see progress every single time you do something. As an artist, I feel like a lot of times we're jaded looking at our own artwork and we're not seeing the progress that I think we see in other people or in other activities, because we're just so blindsided, and I guess the art is just too close to our beings, you know? So like having another hobby like nail art has been really illuminating for me, because I actually can see the progress with every single set I finish. And it sort of reminds me that I am making that progress in my art. I'm just not seeing it as easily. And that's very beautiful, I think. That's how I did my Venti Genshin Impact nails. I hope you enjoyed.